Hello, this is Vernon, and let's continue with Chasing Time Travelers, Part 6. So now we're actually looking at the Mayan map of Earth, and let's begin with the Arctic region. So at the very tip of, at the northernmost point of Chichen Itza, which you see on the right, it's called the Sacred Cenote. And my theory is that that cenote, which is essentially a sinkhole with water in it, is represents the circle of water around the North Pole. And some similarities are that that cenote was deliberately carved to be round. They're not always round like that. And they also found archaeologists also found Mayan blue paint in there. And one theory is that they had painted, well, at Chichen Itza, the sacred cenote that you're looking at, they used to throw people in there, and they asked them for prophecies, and if they gave a prophecy, well, I'm sorry, if they gave a prophecy or not, they were going to drown. But if they climbed out, they were allowed to join the rest of the group, right? And but my point is, they found bodies and they found paint in there, and so one theory is that they painted the bodies, just like we'll talk about later. They would paint your body blue and chop your head off and stuff. But I don't think they were painting these bodies. I think they were painting the water to make it a blue color. And the reason I think that is because when you do the math, it would have been like I think I figured it would be like a gallon or something. It's in my book, a gallon or something of paint for one person, which would be a little excessive. You could probably get by with a quart max. So so that's a similarity to the blue water at the northern part of the earth. The other thing is throwing people into the water because the indigenous tribes in around the North Pole used to throw the elderly people into the water to drown if they couldn't keep up. And if they could climb out back onto the land, then they were allowed to join the group. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. So the center of that cenote would be the North Pole. Oh, yeah, one more thing. Just like there's gold in the far north, they found, I think it was $14 million worth of gold inside this cenote. But it wasn't just, chunks of gold. They had been made into things. Like there was a some type of golden monkey that was in there and stuff like that. So I'm still talking about the same area. If you look at the image on the left, you might think, as I did, oh, looks like they wanted to make a circle out of stones, but they started too close to the edge, which is on the edge would be the right-hand side of the left-hand picture, where the cenote is. But they started too close to the edge, and so they made a mistake. But after looking at enough Mayan images, it occurred to me, no, it's probably not a mistake because they seem to have not made mistakes. So I probably Googled something like C shape, the letter C and then shape and North Pole, and I found out about the Arctic Cordillera. I think what they're showing us on the left is the Arctic Cordillera, which you see on the right in a dark image, sort of shaped like a C, the letter C. And if you look back at the image on the left, I think that small structure represents the Inuit society at the far north. The South Pole has a the South Pole of Chichen Itza, according to my theory, is located inside the cave at Balancanche, and it's basically a tiny island that gets surrounded by water whenever there's a heavy rain. So, northern part of the North Pole, a point surrounded by water. South Pole, an island surrounded by water. Let's go to Asia. Asia is the area of Uxmal, and since I'll forget it in a moment, I'll just tell you right now. I couldn't find the Great Wall of China, and then I found then there was like a year later there was an article in some magazine, and they said, hey, there's this big wall around this certain portion of Uxmal, right? So um, Let's keep going. So here's my hypothesis is that the temple on the left represents the Himalayas, and this image on the left is actually taken from the highest point in the Himalayas, which would be Mount Everest, and the juxtapositions are correct. So when you see this on the left, they're talking about the Himalayas there on the right. And when you see the image on the left, I climbed this thing. It's higher than it looks. If you look at the left-hand top, the left-hand part of the top, you can see there's more back there. That thing's pretty high up. Well, that's the north face. That's a replica of the north face of Mount Everest, which you see on the right. One of the interesting things that they did is they seem to have put the dead zone in there in the temple. In other words, so I climb up the thing, and I forget at which point this little room was, but I was like, why did they put a little room in the middle of this pyramid, right? And I walked inside, I looked around, and as I was coming back out, I realized that I was in the mouth of a jaguar, right? Which basically means certain death, because jaguars don't take any prisoners. And these guys, these are at the top up on that. They call this the Great Pyramid of Uxmal, right? So at the top of the Great Pyramid, you see these four. They look like Asian men who are dressed for cold weather. I think they're talking about Sherpas. Here's a Sherpa family. Here are those guys again. The four guys on the right. The guy on the left, I found him. He's on the opposite side of the Mount Everest north face, and I'm not so sure they're showing his eyes in that picture on the left. I think they may be showing um, old-fashioned, in quote, sunglasses, where people would take a piece of leather and cut slits in it to prevent snow blindness, or it could be his eyes. There's a lot more going on at the top of that. I just don't have time to talk about it. All these parrots and stuff. Let's go to Tibet, which is part of China. So we'll do Tibet and then we'll do the rest of China in the subsequent video. So on the left, we have the governor's palace, and it's in the same juxtaposition in terms of structures in Asia as the palace of the Dalai Lama. And what's interesting is that in both cases, if you ask the Mayas why is it called the governor's palace, they don't know. They just know that from antiquity that's what it's supposed to be called. Well, yeah, that's the person who governed Tibet, right? The Dalai Lama. And if you look at here, if you look at the east gate of the palace of the governor's palace and the east gate of the palace of the Dalai Lama, they both have twin cats. What they also share in common is there's a tiny little village at the base of each. I've never seen anything like this among any other Mayan cities that I've been to or studied. So on the left, you see the back of the governor's palace, and that part in red, that's a place that doesn't have a name that I know of, but I think it's supposed to represent Joel, or however you say it, which is the small city at the base of on the right, the small city. This is just a piece of the city. At the base of the palace of the Dalai Lama, Potala Palace.